Hi, welcome to Street Psychology Podcast. Today's guest is Rachel Coudron. She's going to be talking about her mental health journey and inspiring others to take mental health more seriously and to think about it differently. And she's going to open up about some things that happen in her life and what drives her to be an advocate for mental health support. Rachel, do you want to just start by telling us about yourself overall and what brought you here today?
Thank you so much for having me on. And my name is Rachel Coudron, and I am an American expat. I lived until I was 28 in Oklahoma. And then at the end of 2018, I moved to France, where I've been ever since for almost the last 7 years. When I was in the US, I was teaching. And when I moved over here, I decided to open my own businesses. And now I have two, one that focuses on earrings and hair clips that are hand painted in wood, and I ship them all over. The other one focuses on holistic retreats, and mental health is part of the holistic retreat.
Okay, yeah, so holistic retreat. Let's talk about the mental health aspect of it. So, this is something that you sell virtually to all parts of the world.
Yeah.
Okay, I love that idea. It's making it accessible for everyone. What inspired you to do that?
It's absolutely tied into my story. When I moved to France, everything came unraveled. Everything that I ever knew was no longer. I lost all of my autonomy. I lost all of my ability to make independent decisions. And I wasn't able to communicate people naturally because when I moved to France, I didn't speak French. So I moved to a little bitty town where everyone speaks French and almost no one speaks English. And so when I arrived, I couldn't do anything on my own. My husband had to do everything for me, or I had to go through him with everything. And the loss of autonomy was incredibly difficult. It sent me on a tailspin into depression and high levels of anxiety because I didn't even know how to do basic things here, things that most people take for granted. For example, going into a bank, taking care of your financial situations, whether that's opening an account, getting a new card, figuring out what the code is on the card. If you have a situation that comes up, just walking into the bank and being able to handle it. I couldn't do any of those things. And also another one that people take for granted is walking into the grocery store and just understanding everything that's around you instantaneously. And when everything is in a different language and you don't speak that language, and some things are easy to differentiate, but other things you don't know what it is, you don't know what cut it is or what variation. And also, I'm vegan, so that makes things a little more complicated because I need to be able to read labels to see exactly what's in it. And basically, through that, I learned the really low slopes of feeling isolated and feeling depressed, alone, and unsupported, and without a community around me. When I decided to launch Rachel Coudron events, it was out of that desperation that I remember feeling when I first moved here in 2018, that I never wanted anyone else to feel that way again. I wanted to create an environment where people felt they belonged, that they felt supported, that they felt heard, and that sisterhood could arise from the events and carry on out their lifetimes.
A sisterhood. So, this is about empowering women too.
Yes.
Okay. And so, before you moved to France, did you have any experiences with mental health before that, or was this your first kind of gateway into realizing, whoa, this is overwhelming?
Actually, I did. It was a very close family member attempted suicide when I was in the US. And it was devastating for me. It ripped my life to shreds. And I spent many years going to counseling to recover from that situation. And thankfully, she's still alive. And now she's at a point where she's starting to thrive more in her life. But that was the first experience of really seeing unsupported mental health and the repercussions of it. And then from there, when I moved, was my first personal experience with drastic mental health challenges.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is growing up in your family, mental health support wasn't really a priority.
I think mostly I would agree with that statement. More than telling me that those things aren't important, mental health can exist. If you were physically healthy, then you were healthy. And there was no other variations of that. Like even outside of mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, or energetic health, all of those things, but existed. It was if you were physically healthy, you were healthy.
Yes. If you're physically healthy, you were healthy. And so it sounds like when that happens, a lot of stuff builds up. You don't know it's mental health related if you've never heard about it, if you don't see it on TV and your family's not talking about it, but it naturally builds up and it does come out. And it sounds like for that family member who did attempt suicide, that was eye-opening to you. I'm wondering if it was eye-opening to anyone else in your family.
Oh, I would say absolutely. I think it took all of us by surprise and by shock and awe. And because what I realize now in retrospect, looking back, is that everyone is in some point in their life struggling with their mental health. It doesn't mean that it's constant or always, but at some point. And if we just brush it under the rug, it doesn't. It still exists. It's just not being addressed. It's not being supported. It's not being healed. It's not being transformed. Unraveling that occurs is that when you know inside of yourself that something is wrong or something is not right, if you will. And when you are brave enough to go and talk about it with somebody else and they act like it doesn't exist, then to me, that's the beginning of the unraveling.
Okay, so you just clarified something for me. Can you explain more about that?
Like afterwards, after my family member attempted suicide,
Okay.
then it was talked about because then it was front and center. It wasn't spoken about before. And so with that, then, and I believe this now, but this is my story and how things went. It was then associated with shame. Like we don't talk about that now because that's equated to shame, or we shouldn't talk about it, or it should be kept over to the side in a closet and locked up. We don't discuss this. And because for me, the repercussions of being involved in my family, and I don't want to say refusal, but almost refusal to discuss the event after it happened, for me, that was my unraveling, where I couldn't discuss all the things that were going on in my emotions. And then things began to unravel for me.
What did unraveling look like?
Unraveling for me came in pain. I wasn't actually conscious that I was unraveling. If you've ever read the book, My Body Keeps the Score, or anybody who's listening, trauma stays within your body. And until that part of the trauma is healed and released, it just continues to manifest. And that turns into disease. I had an onset of pelvic hip pain in 2012 that came out of nowhere. I had no prior trauma, nothing that happened to me directly. And 2 months following my family member's attempt.
Yeah. And that's part of that holistic care because your body will respond to trauma and it will manifest as a physical condition or something. It doesn't always have to be mental, but then that physical condition, it probably carried over into some mental struggles.
Oh, absolutely. For me, it started in 2012, and for 2 years I just ignored it. It came on, and on said it was all of a sudden, it'll go away. if I don't address it, if I push it under the rug, if I act like it doesn't exist, then it'll go away. Except for it didn't. It didn't go away. And it just got worse and worse. And then that's when I had to start going to a variety of different doctors to ask what's going on with my body and how do I fix this? What has happened and how do I reverse it and all the things. And then that went with, you're too young to have these problems. You shouldn't be in this much pain. You must be making that up. Or here, just take, at the time I was 24, I was taking 24 prescriptive meds a day because of the amount of pain it was in. And still the pain was there. I was just taking all these medications because doctor after doctor in different disciplines told me, oh, you need to take this, you need to take that. And I felt like they were just like throwing medications at me to see what would stick. And then that had knock-on effects on my mental health, because then it's like nobody could tell me what was going on. Then some people would tell me it was made up in my head, but then other people would be like, no, you have real tangible pain. Then there was also the pelvic pain consequently affected my physical relationship with my husband, and that was an impossibility. And so all of it then turned into thoughts, thinking about myself, I'm not good enough, or I'm forever going to live in pain, or this is my life now, I'm never going to get better. Those were the things that came from the physical pain that turned into mental health struggles.
And then the confusion around everyone's differing opinion about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when did this change? When did you get better with your hip?
When did I get better? And so what happened was, I have to think because it's 2025. In 2016, after 4 years of 2 years of denial, 2 years of trying to take all kinds of medications and get in like lumbar injections and all kinds of things to sort the pain, I finally decided that if I was going to heal, it was going to be on my own terms. And that I was going to stop giving all of my power away to doctors, believing that they were the only ones that could cure me. That was the first mindset shift. And then after that, I changed my diet. Like I mentioned at the very beginning, I'm vegan. That was the first change because I wasn't before. And more specifically, plant-based. And then I started pelvic floor physical therapy. I started cold water therapy, acupuncture, and I started counseling, and I took myself off of all of my medications. For me, I always preface this with you should definitely consult your doctor before you go and take yourself off all your medications. But for me, I did not. And I did tell my doctor the next time I was like, I can't live this life anymore. I just refuse to do it. Like I was at rock bottom. It wasn't that I was feeling inspired and I wanted to be better and do better. It was like I was desperate. I was convinced that my life would never get better and I would forever live in pain. So out of desperation, I made all of those changes. I was like, I have to do this for me.
So you did that all at once. And then when you told your doctor, what was the reaction?
They were very concerned that I took myself off of all of these medications without tampering off of them. They were very concerned that I wouldn't get better, like these things weren't going to work. And I just said, I need to do this for me. The worst thing is that none of this works and I can come back to these medications. Mm-hmm. I've approved them once, you'll approve them again if I'm still in the same amount of pain.
Yeah, what was the official diagnosis?
You were going to ask me what was the official diagnosis. There was never anything specific. They toyed around with fibromyalgia, but they decided that I didn't have all of the symptoms. And so the doctor that I saw there, and what ended up like full circle, I believe my counselor and my physical therapist believe that it was basically a manifestation from the trauma I went through when they attempted, because I was very, very close to the situation. Then I also forgot to mention that I was blamed for the situation as well. And so that manifested into my body, the trauma, the guilt, things manifested into my body and basically caused this, if you will, when you think of your hips and like your pelvic floor, just imagine like your hips and your pelvic floor muscles being like this constantly until they could relax again and come back down from being intense and full of tension all of the time. And then I was not able to heal. Overall, it took about 4 to 5 months for me to changes once I made all of the changes at the same time. And then once I started seeing changes and I wasn't on medication, I was like, oh, this is the same way I feel with medications. We'll just continue down this path. And then that was then 2017 or 2016. And then because I was also convinced I would never have a child or any of those things because I couldn't even be intimate with my husband. It was just like totally off the table. I was in drastic pelvic floor, hip pain. And in September of 2018, just over 2 years later, I found out that I was expecting. My whole life turned around, changed. All my health drastically changed. I did a whole 360, and my daughter was born in just after arriving in France. From going through all of that trauma experience and taking back my health for myself, that's what I do with my retreats.
That's what you do with your retreats, is you help people take back the power that the trauma had on them and recenter.
Yeah, exactly. And take back the health is how I like to look at it. Whether that's if you're experiencing health problems like I was, talking about them and leading them through processes to help them feel more empowered about their choices. I'm not saying I can just take any illness and heal it, but I can talk with the person. I can help them with their mindset to empower them to make empowered choices about their health and how do they approach it and things like that. It's the same for mental health, spiritual health, or energetic health.
What are some of the steps involved?
The first thing is making the choice to actually be involved in the retreat, because that one choice changes your life. For me, the one choice that I was no longer going to let all of my power lay in the hands of the doctors I was seeing transformed my life. And so it starts with the decision to actually attend, because then you're in the mindset of to learn. I'm willing to see things differently, or to realize that I play a crucial role in my own life and how people perceive me, treat me, how my body manifests or empowers itself and heals itself and all those things. It's also just the decision that you have to be open to learning. And then once you arrive, then we go through different mindset shifts and like being you full front to what are your current thoughts, and really diving deep in is how do you perceive yourself to be? How do you perceive your power? How do you perceive your ability to make decisions? And are you confident in changing? Because it's very crucial that we go down into the core of who you are, because until you know who you are, there's no way that you can change. And once you identify that, then the beliefs that you have, are they serving you? Are they holding you back? And then you move from there to, okay, these ones are serving me. These are holding me back. I need to reprogram. I need to get rid of and then reprogram these beliefs. And that also, we go through activities and sessions where we reprogram their beliefs, but reprogramming beliefs is not enough. Then you've got to implement it into your lifestyle of what thoughts are you going to start having? What habits are you going to start making or doing to implement these new beliefs, to create more neural pathways to your brain? These are my beliefs. I'm not reverting back to the prior self. And then once we've integrated those, we go through a short process at the retreat, right? About a 5-day getting all the foundations laid. But then afterwards, we talk once a month about your progress, what you need help with, how are things going, and any changes you've made in life, and how are they serving you. So that's a little glimpse into the process.
Yeah. And so you've had success with this model?
Yeah.
So what's your usual client? What do your clients usually come in with? What kind of issues do they have?
I find often with women is that they have a mindset of not feeling enough, where no matter what they're doing in their life, if they have kids, if they don't have children, then somehow they're not producing, doing, or being enough. And that holds them from wanting to follow their passions and their interests and their loves in their life, their mental purpose in life, and because they feel that they're not enough to do it. And that also then manifests into disease or physical pain in the body, because if your mind and your thoughts are telling you enough, that you're not enough, you hear that every day in a different way, then you stop to believe it. And when you stop to believe it, then your whole body and all the cells in your body reacts to that belief. And one thing that I just thought of that came into my mind was the Heart Math Institute out of California. They did a study about DNA where they extracted DNA from a person. They put it in a separate location from the person, and then the person experienced situations, like they watched situations where they were experiencing joy or love or gratitude, the higher frequencies, and then if they experienced sadness, anxiety, fearfulness on the lower frequency, and they were looking at how did the DNA interact with just the experiences that person was experiencing in real time. And what was fascinating to me, and I thought maybe it would be fascinating to the podcast, was when you were experiencing the higher frequencies of love and joy and gratitude, then your DNA actually lengthened.
Hmm.
And when you were experiencing the fearfulness, lonely, anxiety, depression, the lower frequency feelings, that your DNA shortened. And it was actually seen on the DNA that was separated from the body, that was extracted, that the same thing happened. And so where our body is, our cells and our body and our DNA are all connected. I found that really fascinating.
I'm fascinated. I have to learn more about that. That is extremely fascinating that you're going to extract the DNA from someone's body, place it in another area, but it's still responding and reacting to that person's experiences.
Yeah.
So the lengthening of the DNA, that's indicating, like you said, positive feelings, good feelings.
Yeah, like calmness, joy, happiness in your body.
So that's beneficial.
Yeah.
If it shortens, it's bad.
So when you're feeling joy and happiness and calmness, it's also causing your heart to go into coherence. So I don't know if you know anything about this, but your heart and your mind being in coherence means if you've ever watched heartbeat on a monitor, a lot of times it's like jagged. It's here's a bump and then here's a bump. So what heart coherence is, it's like a very flowy up and down the same length, and your body is in its highest state, its highest frequency and ability to heal when you are in heart coherence.
Nice.
And it's
Okay.
the method that's taught for people that are experiencing severe mental health is teaching them how to get into heart coherence so that they can recover faster.
Is that incorporated into your method at all?
So it's something I recently learned about 6-7 months ago. And my next retreat is actually next year in May, but I will be doing coherence activities because I've read a lot about it. It's also out of the Heart Math Institute in California. and they have a lot of data and interesting articles about how heart coherence and the DNA and your feelings and experiences are directly impacting your physical body.
So one thing that you mentioned earlier is that a lot of women who come into your retreat, they're dealing with not feeling good enough, and they've probably been hearing these things their whole lives, and they start to believe it.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I want to go back to your story because you told me you thought it was your fault. Someone told you that. Did you believe that? Was it more about the belief than the situation for you?
I feel like it was both. When we talk about the belief, I was directly told that it was my fault that my family member attempted suicide. There was no roundabout about it. That was direct. And I didn't believe that I was.
Okay.
But then when someone significant in your life tells you that it is, then all you start doubting everything you think or feel. And
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So then I believe that I then took on from being blamed was the core, like the foundation for the pain that manifested afterwards. Almost in a sense, my body punishing me for obviously it's your fault, Rachel. So you need to have some kind of punishment for causing the situation to occur. I think it was a subconscious thought. Like I didn't actually have those thoughts consciously, but I think subconsciously I was sabotaging myself to pay.
I think that's an important distinction to make because, like you said, it is subconscious a lot, but what you hear doesn't matter if you believe it or if it's your thought or someone else's, it does affect you. And to be aware of that possibility is a good step in being able to combat that and get back into who you are. Like you said, let's find out who you are at the core. Let's remove all external beliefs, anything that you've heard about yourself. Let's find out who you are. At your core, Rachel, you didn't believe that, but there was still something inside of your body that reacted to it. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm.
That experience that was surrounded by that attempt was for many years traumatic for me. If we would have been speaking about 8 years ago, I would probably be in tears and not even be able to tell the story because every time I came back to it, I would be filled with guilt and unable to function properly. It took 2 years of intensive therapy counseling for me to work through all of those beliefs around the situation, the beliefs that I believed about myself, the guilt that I felt. And it was only through going to counseling that I was able to move past. But the experience there still defines me and has impacted drastically the woman I've become and businesses I've created. But thankfully, I was open to going to counseling and it really changed my life.
Was so when you in counseling, first of all, are there some certain techniques or therapeutic methods that you use that you felt helped you that might be able to help people going through similar things?
Yeah, one was to on my left and right leg when she would give me the prompt to go back to the situation around the suicide attempt, and she would tap on my legs while I was going mentally through this experience. You could do it on yourself because it keeps you centered in your body and grounded. And instead of your mind, if they perceive it being real, then it's real. If you're going back in that memory and it's incredibly emotional and you remember every single detail, then tapping on your legs will help remember that you're in this room. You're not there right now. Past experience, and you can come back and be safe in your body and in the space that you're in. I found that very helpful because at first when I would go back there, it was like my mind was totally in just like I was in that moment and I was nowhere else. And I had no realization that I was in a room. And so her teaching me and reminding me that, oh, actually, you can come out of that experience. You don't have to live in it all the time. You can come out of it and be here and be safe. The second one that I share with a lot of people is the idea that you're on a train in your life and you're moving through different experiences. So she would always preface my counselor with that, Rachel, you're on a train, you're going to go through your memories, and then you're going to come out of them. There's a tunnel, there's light at the end of the tunnel. And so, because we had to go back through it multiple times to work through all the trauma that was involved, that experience, was that I would get on the train in my mind. I picked out the color. We're at a window, decided what the seats look like, all the stuff, because those things, I pay attention a lot to details. So I need to know what it looks like. And I can feel it. It's coming. It's dark. We have the memory. It's chugging along on the train, and then it's light. And it's helping your brain process the trauma. Every single day, subconsciously, my body was reacting to being in trauma actively. And so working through that and remembering, okay, body, you're here momentarily, not forever, and not always.
So it's really about staying grounded and present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say so. And for me, it's like the physical presence and groundedness, in a sense of, it's so easy. You've experienced drastic trauma, lost emotions in your life, to just get sucked back in to that whole experience and live in that space every single day. And because it's such high emotions, you just remembering that you're not always going to be in that space. Your life isn't always going to look this way. And that there's going to be a day in the future of life where you've healed from this experience, where you've overcome this experience in your life, and that now you can help others if you choose to.
Is your experience here in the States correlated to why you decided to move to France?
Actually, not. No. And my husband is French.
Okay.
And so we decided to move to France because we wanted to live in France. I was a person that I grew up wanting since the age of about 9 to live abroad.
So that just happened. Like you said, your husband is French and things like that. But when you moved there, you started to find this new way of healing on your own prior to that. But it took you a while to get into the mindset of making a business out of it, making it globally accessible for other people. What did that journey look like?
For me, it took a while because I needed to work out all the things that were going on in my life and all the trauma from that specific experience. And then when I moved and I was explaining my loss of autonomy, I fell into anxiety and depression. And just shortly after I moved, I also moved when I was pregnant. So I had a child here in France. Then I was treated like a third person in my own pregnancy, which I would never wish on anyone, which very much affected my mental health. I had my husband and his family here. And so in one sense, I had support, but I didn't have any friends. Like, I didn't really know them that well. And they couldn't speak English, but it wasn't comfortable in a sense of people that I had been friends with for decades, my own parents, my own family. And it was really hard when I moved. And I needed, that was like the next phase of having to handle those emotions and all the things that came with moving. And then once we got out of that section, because I was 2018 moved, and then we had, my daughter was born in 2019 here in France. COVID hit in January of 2020, and that it was like 2 years of very intense things here in France about mask and isolation and all types of things, sorting out what was going on in the world with COVID, how are things going to evolve, vaccines, all of that stuff. That brings me into 2022. And by then, my daughter was 3. I knew that I wanted to be more than just a mom, and I needed to have a business. I needed to be challenged. I wanted to help people. I just didn't know how yet. When it came to the retreats, I opened the business in 2023, and it was actually right after I attended. I'm very much into personal development, and I specifically love Tony Robbins, and I went to Unleash Your Power Within, and that was in Birmingham in England. And after following him for probably a decade, it completely changed my life and transformed my life. I was actually in business doing something else, and there was an activity where he wanted us to get into our intuition, telling us what path and goal and where should we be. And then I saw myself leading a holistic event for women, and I was quite shocked. It was like a vision. I was quite shocked. I was like, that's not me. I do these things. I do other stuff. It's not my role. You guys, intuition, you're wrong. I got it for multiple days. And it was really not the case. It just sat on my shoulder. It was like, Rachel, it has to be you. It has to be you. It has to be you. I'm just like, why don't you understand? It's not me. But eventually I realized that my story and everything shared here is really why it has to be me, because I can relate to people on very intimate, deep levels about the trauma and anxiety and depression that they've been through. And that allows me to really be able to help and transform their lives and help them take back their health and their power. And so once things came full circle and I accepted this is really my path and my calling, and that's how I decided to move into business.
You listened, you accepted that, and you moved forward with it, and it turned out great.
Yeah.
Does your family support you with this?
With what I'm doing now?
Yeah.
At first, they were very shocked. As far as like my immediate family, like my daughter and my husband, I remember coming home from Power Within, and I told my husband what I was going to do. Of course, it's out of left field because he's that's not at all related to what you're doing. And I'm like, yeah, we're shutting it down. We're going this direction. This is the path. I told him that I wanted to bring in other practitioners. And he goes, but you don't know anybody. How are you going to do that? I was like, that is not important. What's important is that I have decided on my path. You've decided to commit to your purpose, then life just happens for you. And the universe will get behind. And it did. I ended up having people come from England and Ireland and Greece and France to my retreat this past May. And it was amazing watching what happens when you actually listen to your intuition and you're willing to act on it.
Rachel, tell listeners where they can find you, where they can find out more about your services and your retreat, and any final messages that you would also like to leave them with.
Absolutely. So you can find me predominantly on Facebook. You can look under Rachel Jennings Coudron. And then if you go to rachelcoudronevents.com, then you can know all about my retreats and any other product and how I can assist you. And please feel free to DM me on Facebook or reach out to me, say you'd listen to it, your thoughts about the podcast episode, and any questions that you have for me. Yeah. And then as far as final notes that I want to leave you with, I would say there's always an alternative route. The route that you're going down doesn't have to be your final destination. You can choose down a different path. And all it takes is just one committed decision, and you can transform your life and create it into anything that you want.
Thank you for being here today. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, same. And thank you guys for listening. See you next time.